Hey everybody, welcome on our channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Widowmaker? Part 1. Huge shout out to Xanto for this story. If you are new on the channel, don't forget to subscribe our channel and like the video too. So without wasting any more time, let's start the story. It was early morning, and the wind was blowing coldly across the mountaintop of Mount Makalu. There was nothing in sight for miles, as for the only thing you got to see was the rocks and snow that was circulating on and around the mountain. The small particles of snow floating in the air was flowing smoothly in one direction, never to be disturbed for miles. But what caused them to flow in one way? As the snowflakes neared their destination, a man was seen meditating on the snow-covered rocks, as the snowflakes circulate around him a few times before leaving, only for more to take its place. This man was peacefully meditating on a very cold region of Earth. Now he would be considered crazy on doing this, but what struck him as more crazy was that he was doing this without any warm garments covering his body aside from pants. The man sat there for what seemed like hours, never to be disturbed even by the slightest sound. In time, his face stirred a bit before he started to slowly open his eyes, where he was then greeted back into reality. As he sat there for a few minutes more, he couldn't help but think about what happened to the life he was welcomed to, but how long was that? How long has he been on Earth? How long has it been since he witnessed the fall of the elemental nations and the last of its chakra users? How long has it been since humans slowly forgot the existence of chakra and start the advancement of technology? How long has it been since he heard and saw the creation of the Omni, where the Omni then revolted against its creators and started killing humans across the globe? How long has it been since the United Nations pleaded for him to become part of Overwatch and its X-Man strike team? But most of all, how long has it been since he defected from Overwatch, when he went rogue and has been sought out by agents from his home? Was it 20-30 years? Who knows? Though he thought of this, he couldn't really call himself a rogue hero anymore. The reason for this was because a few months after he fled from Overwatch, the HQ where all the specialized agents were located at was destroyed, blown up, taking down two of his friends, and now former members of the six-man strike team with it. Those friends were Jack Morrison and Gabriel Reyes. Before they knew him, Jack and Gabriel were two friends that knew each other for quite a while and fought alongside each other in the Omni crisis. In short, they were two deadly bastards that loved everyone in Overwatch. That is until that very day. The explosion inside of the Overwatch HQ was never confirmed of how it occurred or what caused it. All they knew was that ever since Jack Morrison became Overwatch commander, Reyes and Morrison started to drift apart as friends and would get into countless of arguments regarding one thing or the other. But that wasn't the horrible part, no. As they argued for countless of days, they failed to notice the amount of people that slowly wanted to have Overwatch disbanded. The people didn't really see a reason that Overwatch should remain when the Omni crisis was over, so soon the people started to grow in numbers in order for Overwatch to be disbanded from the public, stating that the people don't want to be watched anymore. As Jack was trying to calm the riots around the Overwatch HQ, Gabriel was planning his own plot to take over the base for himself. One day, it all went down when Gabriel led a revolution against Jack with half of the agents in Overwatch. Jack didn't like this action one bit, so in order to stop this mess, he gathered up the agents that were willing to fight alongside him and fought back the agents his former friend was leading. In the end, there were no victors once the HQ blew up, leaving no survivors in the process, not even Morrison nor Reyes. But two beings were definitely born that day. One which is trying to wipe out the remaining agents of Overwatch and the other targeting various corporations in order to expose the truth behind why Overwatch was shut down and bring the people responsible to justice. As the man stood up on his legs, he stretched his limbs before combing back his blonde hair with his hand. The man's eyes were dead as it held no emotion at all, but his eyes were also colored of a shallow ocean blue. The man's hair stood out in all directions like some other agents from Overwatch, and his face was clear aside from the faded outlines of whisker marks. This man is Naruto Uzumaki, the rogue former hero of Overwatch. As Naruto looked up into the sky, he couldn't help but smile at the sudden bonds and memories he had when he was part of Overwatch. Reaching into his pocket, he took out various pictures of his friends he made while he was in the organization, as well as a few other people he met while he was on the run. Looking at the first picture in his hand, he smiled sadly at the two people he was looking at. There were 3 people in total in the picture. One person in the photo was a man with a science coat and glasses. He had a lightly trimmed beard as well as brown hair. The man was smiling as he stared at the animal under him. This man was Dr. Harold Winston, the man Naruto accompanied as they flew towards the Horizon lunar colony located on the moon. The second person animal was a gorilla, a very young gorilla. The gorilla was biting onto a jar of peanut butter, desperately trying to get it to open in order to eat the thick savory flavor of what was inside the jar. This gorilla's name was Winston, another of Naruto's friends he made and brought along with him to Overwatch once a tragic incident happened to the scientists on the moon. The last person in that photo was him. In the photo, he rolled his eyes as he chuckled at little Winston's childish behavior. Naruto brought the photo to his waist level before he stared up towards the sky and towards the faded outline of the moon. The joy and adventure he had when he met little Winston in the colony was surely magnificent. The memories of little Winston only felt like it was just yesterday. Flashback. Winston was hanging on the roof of his room as he was fondling with Harold's glasses in order to use them to stare clearly out into the moon's surface. One thing that the scientists here in the lunar colony didn't realize about Winston was that his vision was blurred, meaning he needs glasses in order to see clearly. Good thing he can manage to sneak away with his caretaker's glasses without being caught. As he stared out into the moon's surface, he couldn't help but fascinate how it'll be like out there in the world other than sitting in a colony running tests every single day. It's an adventure he's been wanting to do ever since he was placed in this colony. He wanted to go out there and play around whenever he wanted to play, swing around whenever he wanted to swing, and go to bed whenever he wanted to go to bed. Looking through the glasses lens, he gasped as he looked outside of the base. It was so much more wider than he thought it would be on the outside. Sure, his two caretakers informed him that he wasn't allowed to go outside the base, otherwise he would regret it, but he didn't really care about their warnings. After all, a kid is going to be a kid for part of his or her life, right? All of a sudden he heard the door behind him unlocking itself. He immediately jumped back on the bed just in time to see his two caretakers enter the room. The two men that little Winston saw walk in were no other than Dr. Harold Winston and Naruto Uzumaki. I think you have something that belongs to me. Harold smiled once he saw Winston try to hide the glasses behind his back. Winston backed up from Harold's approach before sitting down, only to look down onto the bed covers embarrassed on being caught. Harold walked up to Winston before holding his hand out. Hand it over. Winston whined as he refused to give back his caretaker's glasses. It's okay, kiddo. You're not in trouble. Harold said as he still kept his hand stretched out. Winston, however, looked at the hand for a few seconds before he made a weak biting gesture toward it. Hey, now that's not very nice, Winston, and you know it. Harold stated once he pulled his hand back before Winston could have bit it. Winston, however, grumbled a bit as he still kept the doctor's glasses hostage in his own hands. Naruto chuckled at Harold's and little Winston's antics before walking beside Harold. Now Harold. I don't think Winston would want to give you your glasses without something in return. Naruto then pulled out a small jar of peanut butter from his coat before showing it to Winston. How about we trade, Winston? You get to have the peanut butter if you give Harold's glasses back. Sound good? Winston smiled in joy before grabbing the peanut butter from Naruto's hand and handing Harold's glasses back to him. You see, Harold? All you need to do is give Winston something in exchange if you want your glasses back. Naruto stated as he was watching Winston trying to bite off the cap to the peanut butter jar. Yeah, I guess you're right. Harold looked over his glasses before putting them on. After all, Winston isn't like most gorillas here, he's special. Naruto looked at Winston a moment more before replying. I guess you're right. Naruto and Harold shared a look toward each other before they started laughing. Before they can say anything else, the two heard Winston make a curious sound. Turning their attention to the young gorilla, Naruto and Harold saw Winston staring out of his window in curiosity, wondering how the outside world would be like. There's not much to see from in here, kiddo. Harold said, gaining Winston's attention for a sec before he turned his attention back towards the window. But you know there's more out there, don't you? Winston turned his attention back toward the scientist before hugging his peanut butter, showing that he indeed knows there's more out there and would hopefully like to see it with his own eyes. The two smiled at Winston's sudden aura in order to go search for adventure and because he looked cute. Naruto looked toward Harold before speaking. Harold, don't you think it's time we show him? Harold looked at Naruto for a sec before stood up and nodded. He then turned his attention back to the young gorilla before holding out his hand in order for him to grab it. Come on, it's time I show you something. Winston smiled before he grabbed his hand and started to follow Harold as he led him toward whatever he wanted to show him. As Winston started to walk past Naruto, he immediately grabbed the blonde's hand before dragging him along. Feisty now, are we? Naruto chuckled a bit before he saw Harold look at him. Do you think he'll like it? Harold asked his fellow comrade, causing Winston to look at Naruto wondering what he'll say. Naruto smiled for a few seconds before replying. Definitely. Harold was still holding Winston's hand once they entered a wide open room that had a gigantic telescope placed in the center of it. After a few seconds more, Harold released Winston's hand, causing the young ape to stop waddling and get on all fours and continue walking. Once Winston halted his movement, Harold walked over next to him before crouching and taking off his glasses. You took these because you wanted to see if there was more out there. Harold then placed his glasses on Winston's face before he turned towards Naruto, who was holding a lever, and nodded. Turning his attention back to Winston, he continued speaking. Well, see for yourself. Naruto then pulled the lever, causing the gate to open up behind Harold and reveal what we know as our home planet, Earth. Wow. Winston spoke after a few seconds in sudden amazement, not even noticing Naruto approaching behind him until he grabbed his hand. Come on. Naruto smiled as he led Winston, with Harold right behind them, closer to the edge of the gate so they can get a closer look. This world you are looking at right now is Earth, the place Harold and I came from. A world that holds so much love and joy from everyone around you. Where every day many of us go around on a search for adventure, whether it'll take minutes, hours, days, months, or even years. It's a place that holds many myths, legends, and miracles about the past, present, and possibly the future. Naruto's face then turned all serious. But it is also a world that holds sorrow, hatred, and war. Not only that, but the world is also plagued by disease, terrorists, and so much more than anyone could possibly imagine. Too much for one man to witness in a single life. Winston's eyes were wide as he heard how Naruto explained the world they came from. He looked at Harold with a questioning gaze, wondering if all what Naruto said was true. Walking next to Winston, Harold gave his reply. It's true, but like everything else. It can be changed. Even one man can change the entire world if given the chance. Harold then stared off towards Earth before continuing. Always remember, Winston, never accept the world as it appears to be, dare to see it for what it could be. Winston looked at the two for a second before grabbing their hands, where they then all stared out towards Earth for the next hour or so. Winston jolted up from his bed from the sound of an alarm going off and his room flashing red with lights. Right now, Winston was terrified. He didn't know what was happening or what the red lights meant. Not knowing what to do, he placed his back against the wall before he started to whimper as he brought his knees to his chest. All of a sudden the entire colony shook from a sudden explosion, then went off unexpectedly. This caused Winston to start crying as brought his entire body together in one big ball. Come on. Why won't you fucking open? Winston heard the sound of Naruto's voice from behind the door. Winston. Winston, are you there? Winston managed to yell out, a little relieved to see one of his caretakers coming for him. Winston. Are you alright? Are you hurt by any chance? Naruto yelled from the other side of the door. No. I don't think so. Winston responded before continuing. Where's Dr. Winston? He went to go get something from his office. He told me to come get you and make sure you are safe. From there we will rendezvous near the escape pods. Naruto yelled as he still attempted to open the door. Damn it. Escape pods. Why do we need to go to the escape pods? No time. Quick. Can you do anything to open this door or perhaps get out of the room? It seems the door is damaged. Winston started to look around frantically in order to find something to escape. All of a sudden he spotted something on the ceiling. There's an air vent, but it seems like it's too small for me to squeeze into. Naruto let out a sigh of disappointment before thinking. I didn't want to do this, but I guess I don't have a choice. Turning his attention back to the door, he then yelled at Winston to get out of the way. Naruto then grabbed the edge of the door before he slowly started to bend part of the door apart. He then started to punch and kick the door, causing it to loosen up with each impact until finally he broke the door down. Whoa. Winston spoke in surprise on what he just witnessed. That was awesome. Naruto let out an awkward smile before he was interrupted with the colony shaking again. Come on. We have to get moving. Naruto then turned and started to run with Winston right behind them as they made their ways towards escape pods. Harold. Are you there? I got Winston out of his room. We're heading toward the escape pods now. Naruto spoke through a communication device Harold gave him. Harold. Do you read me? Don't worry, I'm here, Naruto. I'll be at the escape pods in just a moment. I had some very important documents to pick up. Harold responded over the communication device. Alright, be careful. I should say the same to you. Naruto chuckled at this as he and Winston continued to run down the hallway. Naruto, what's going on? Why do you and Dr. Winston sound scared? Winston asked. Sorry kiddo, but I think it's best you don't know. I don't want you to be hurt by this. Naruto responded. Winston looked disappointed at his response, but he couldn't really say anything. If his caretakers refused to inform him on what's going on, then he knew it was something he shouldn't know. Hey, don't look so down kiddo. We're almost there, and once we do we'll be going on an adventure wherever and whenever you want. Naruto stated, trying to cheer up Winston, and it did work. Come on, just around this corner and we'll know. Naruto suddenly came to a halt once the two turned the corner, and what they saw was something Naruto was trying to keep away from Winston. There on the ground were splatters of blood of various body parts of scientists and the security that worked here. What happened here? Winston backed up a bit from what he saw in front of him. And what he saw made him want to vomit. His question was soon answered from the animal that came out. The animal that came out was another gorilla, but unlike Winston, this gorilla was much more older and bigger. Looking over this gorilla, this animal's arms had muscles the size of bowling balls that also included his hind legs. The ferocious beast had palms close to the size of a textbook and had an odd odor radiating off himself. Looking at his face, the animal's left eye was closed as it had a scar going straight down the center of it, leaving it blind on that eye. Once the gorilla spotted Naruto, it let out a threatening growl, showing off his teeth that show minimum signs of blood, before standing on his back legs and pounding his chest. While he was doing this, the gorilla let out a loud ferocious roar before looking back at Naruto. "Winston, I need you to stand back." Naruto spoke in seriousness without looking at him. Winston slowly started to back up from Naruto, waiting for what was about to happen next. Once Naruto saw Winston was at a safe distance, he took off his coat before tossing it aside without breaking eye contact from his opponent in front of him. As the gorilla saw this, he grew slightly more angry that this human thinks he can take him on. His own kind. After all, the humans that they slaughtered throughout the colony only screamed in fear as they tried to run, some of them were even pleading to be spared. PFFT, pathetic. Now this human standing before him thinks he can take him on like he's nothing. Well, that was a first, but like all the others, he'll just be ripped apart like all the other humans here. Not wasting any more time, the gorilla started to charge at Naruto full force in order to kill him. With each leap he came closer and closer to the blonde human before him. By now he thought that the human would have started to run or beg for mercy, but he didn't. He still stood there waiting for him to finish him off. The gorilla grew ticked off on this sudden behavior that once he got close enough he leaped in the air in order to pounce and crush the human, but only ended up missing as the man disappeared in front of his eyes. The next thing the gorilla knew was that he was slammed on the ground before feeling a foot placed on top of his head. "The slow," Naruto stated before he effortlessly crushed the gorilla's head, causing his blood and parts of his brain to fling across the room. Winston looked on in horror at what he just witnessed. His caretaker just killed one of his own kind, and he did it without hesitating. Winston backed up in fear from Naruto, afraid that he might do the same to him. Naruto was hurt once he saw the way Winston was looking at him. It was just like when he was a kid back in Konohagakure, those stares of fright that he received from various civilians in his village. Shaking off those memories, he looked at Winston before crouching down on his knee. "Don't worry, Winston. I won't hurt you." "But you killed him," Winston frighteningly said as he sat down before bringing his knees toward his chest. "You killed him without hesitation." "Listen, kiddo, I killed him because I had to. Besides, what do you think will happen if I allowed him to leap on me?" Naruto stated, earning part of Winston's attention. "He would have done the same. He would have ripped me to shreds in front of your eyes without a second thought. Who knows, maybe after that he would have gone after Harold before doing the same thing to him. Do you really want that to happen?" Naruto looked at the young ape. Winston's eye grew slightly wide before he responded by shaking his head side to side. "Exactly, now let's get to that escape pod. Harold must be waiting for us there already." With that said, Naruto turned and started to run towards their destination with Winston soon following. "You two sure took your sweet time," Harold stated once he saw the two enter the room. "Well, we ran into a little trouble on the way here. We couldn't just run." Naruto chuckled a bit before he locked the door behind him. Winston, however, looked at Harold with a questioning gaze. "Dr. Harold? What's going on?" Winston asked, gaining the scientist's attention for a split second. "Not now, buddy. I'll explain everything to you once we leave this place." Harold smiled sadly as he was working on getting the escape pod to open. While doing this, the door behind Naruto started to bang as they heard several gorillas trying to break open the door. "Harold, get that pod open now." Naruto yelled frantically as he started to pile things against the door in order to buy more time for the scientist. "Almost there," Harold whispered as he started to shake a bit. After a minute more, the escape pod let out a ding before the door opened, allowing them entrance to the pod. "Got it. Everyone. Inside now." Winston wasted no time and immediately jumped inside the escape pod, with Naruto and Harold jumping in soon after. Once they were all in, Harold went and strapped Winston onto his seat before he went and sat on a chair of his own. From there he started to set the destination on where this pod should land on Earth before he initiated the countdown for launching. 1 minute until launching. The three heard a female voice through the pod. "Ahaha, you hear that, kiddo? We're getting out of here." Harold smiled as looked toward the young ape. Winston smiled in return at finally being able to leave this place for good. Turning his attention toward the window, he started to kick his feet in the air as the pod started to rumble. 30 seconds until launching. The voice said again. The three started to hear the gorillas desperately banging much more harder on the door in order to get in and take out what's left of the survivors in the lunar colony. Suddenly a small chunk of the door was broke open, exposing the face of a gorilla as it stared viciously at them before he suddenly roared. Winston started to whimper, afraid that the gorillas might actually break open and kill them before the pod can take off. Suddenly he felt Harold grab his hand in a comforting gesture. Looking at the scientist, he saw Harold smiling at him. "It's okay. We're gonna make it," Harold stated, boosting Winston's confidence on escaping. They were then interrupted by the countdown. Launching pod in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. A sudden explosion took them by surprise, causing the pod to shake. Warning. Safety locks damaged. Launch has been stopped. What? Harold started to fiddle in order to launch the pod, but every time he pressed the launch button, it just stated that the pod was unable to launch. No. 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 Damn it. Harold slammed both of his hands on the controls before leaning back on his chair and releasing a desperate sigh. We were so close. Dr. Harold? What happened? Winston looked a little scared that this might be the end for them. Letting out a short breath, he replied. It's nothing, kiddo. Everything's fine. This is bad. The pod won't launch out of here, and with those animals breaking through the door, I don't think we're gonna make it. Harold muttered towards Naruto, making sure Winston can't hear anything. Shit. Naruto muttered. There has to be another way to launch this pod. I doubt it. The only way I know how to launch this pod from in here is through the controls. If we want to launch this pod, then we'll have to activate it from. Harold suddenly stopped mid-sentence once he realized that they could actually get out of here. Well, not all of them can. Unstrapping himself from his seat, he suddenly got up from his seat before heading towards the pod's exit. Harold, what are you doing? Naruto asked before he quickly unstrapped himself and followed the scientist, leaving behind a very curious ape. Harold. Stop. Harold. Before Harold can open the pod, his hand was suddenly stopped by his friend's own hand. What are you doing? Naruto asked again. Naruto, don't you see? If we just sit here and do nothing, then those animals out there will no doubt get to us. He made a sudden grab for the latch, but Naruto stopped him again. I can protect you both though. Isn't that why you requested me to come along? Listen, I know I requested you to come along and protect us both. You're an Overwatch agent, I know. But how long do you think you can last before you get overwhelmed by those gorillas? Well, that's not your problem. I was requested and ordered to come and protect you too, so I'm going to do that. And then what, huh? Harold suddenly yelled. Once you're done for, those animals will no doubt come and kill me too. Do you really want that? Do you really want both of us to die so we can leave Winston all alone, do you? Naruto just glared at him, not knowing what to say. Before any of them can say anything else, the young gorillas suddenly interrupted them. Dr. Harold. What's going on? Winston spoke sadly as a few tears threatened to come down his face. Why are you and Naruto fighting? Harold and Naruto looked sadly at Winston for a few seconds before Harold started to walk towards him. Once he was right in front of the gorilla, he kneeled down so he was the same height as the young ape. No, you got it wrong. Naruto and I weren't fighting. We just had a disagreement regarding something. The tear suddenly came down the young ape's eye, hurting the scientist in the process. Hey, don't cry. Everything is gonna be alright. Harold stated before he ruffled Winston's head, earning a few giggles from the ape. Looking at Winston for a few more seconds, he continued. Winston, I know you're gonna do great things in life. Even great than I. That's why I want you to push and achieve your dream. Can you do that for me? Winston smiled as he nodded his head up and down. Harold chuckled a bit before ruffling his head again. Good. After a few seconds, he suddenly took off his glasses before placing it on Winston's face. Here. I want you to have these. To remember me. Winston gasped when he saw through Harold's glasses. He didn't know why, but Harold's glasses allowed him to see more clearly wherever he was at. After a few seconds he looked back at the scientist. Remember you? Why do I need to remember you if you're gonna look out for me everywhere we go? Harold laughed a bit before replying. Yeah, you're right. I'm going to be looking out for you everywhere you go, kiddo. Once he said this, he ruffled Winston's head one more time before he started to walk back toward the exit of the pod where Naruto was still waiting at. Are you sure you want to do this? Naruto asked, not looking at the scientist. Definitely. Harold replied after a few seconds. Naruto, I want you to promise me something. Promise me that you'll take care of Winston once I'm gone. Make sure you find him a home where he can be loved by everyone. He turned to face the Overwatch agent before continuing. Please take care of him. Naruto could only nod in acceptance. He pressured himself to do something. To find a way to avoid this sacrifice, but why wouldn't he move? Why can't he help at a time like this? The answer soon dawned on him: he can't. In the end, he hopelessly watched Harold open the latch for the escape pod before rushing out towards the controls next to the pod so he could launch it manually, ignoring the fact that the door the gorillas were breaking through was almost breached. As Harold was working on launching the escape pod, Naruto slowly walked back to his seat before sitting down, not bothering to strap himself in. "Naruto? What's Dr. Harold doing?" Winston asked, seeing that Harold didn't come in. After a few seconds they heard the same female voice again. "Launching the pod in 15 seconds. Let's just say that he's working on getting us out of here from outside the escape pod." Naruto wiped his mouth. "And he's not going to be able to come with us." After a few seconds Winston's eyes grew wide in realization, quickly undoing the straps that Harold put over him, he then ran toward the exit of the pod before trying to open it. "Launching in 5, 4. Dr. Harold. Open the pod. Dr. Harold." Winston cried as he forcefully shook the handle before he started to bang against the window. Looking at the scientist in front of him, he saw him place his palm against the window before saying something to him that he couldn't hear. Placing both palms on the window, Winston started to allow the tears to roam down his face in utter hopelessness. The last thing he saw was the gorillas breaking through the door before making a dash towards the scientist. The escape pod immediately launched away, preventing the young ape to witness his kind mercilessly kill the young scientist. Then flashback. Naruto shook his head from the memory. This massacre took place years ago, so why would he think of this now? Harold would have want them to move on, to live their lives without them in peace and harmony. Speaking of peace and harmony, Naruto would have stopped at nothing to see the look on Harold's face once he figures out Winston became an Overwatch agent just like him. He smiled at the thought of such an event to occur. It would have been a very humorous day indeed. As he was about to draw another photo, one of them slipped from his stack where it then landed face down onto the snow. Naruto looked at the fallen picture for a second or two before he bent over and picked it up from the ground. Turning it around, he swiped some snow off that got stuck on the photo before smiling. There were a total of 5 people in the photo. One of them was a man who stood way taller than the others, about 7'4", he has white hair along with a beard. He also wore large silver crusader armor in order to protect his body in battle. This man's name was Reinhard Wilhelm, now former agent of Overwatch. The second man was rather short man about 4'5" or 4'6". The small man had a long blonde beard that sticks out in 2 ways. His right arm was very muscular, and as for his left arm, well, his left arm turned out to be all machine, most likely for building weapons and repairing. He also has a red goggle on his right eye and a feisty looking machine on his back. This man is Torbjorn Lindholm. The third person in the picture next to Torbjorn was a woman. An Egyptian woman to be more precise. She carried a big sniper over her shoulder as she was rubbing Torbjorn's head with her knuckles. She also wore a general-shaped hat with an Egyptian bird symbol in the center of it. This woman was Ana Amari, mother of Fariha Amari Farah. The third man in the group was Hispanic. He had a black beanie on his head with the Overwatch gear he was given when he first joined. He also had a gray vest with 2 shotguns strapped to the back of his chest. The man was smiling at the camera as he gave a 2-finger salute. This man was Gabriel Reyes, deceased Overwatch agent and former leader of the specialized Blackwatch. The final man was an American man. He had blonde hair and blue eyes, he wore a blue trench coat with armored shoulder pads. And like Torbjorn, he had a blue goggle piece on his right eye. The man was smiling as he gave a wave toward the camera. This man was John Morrison, deceased Overwatch commander and leader of the original 6-man strike team that led the victory against the Omnics. What made Naruto smile a little more was because of what was written on the top corner of the photo. It read, "Happy birthday Naruto." Speaking of his birthday, this day the photo was taken was Naruto's first birthday that he ever got to enjoy with friends and other loyal agents in Overwatch. He still remembers that day clearly. Flashback a year after the incident on the lunar colony. "Come on, Dad. Hurry, you don't want to miss it." A little girl yelled out as she was running down the Overwatch base with a happy energized ape next to her. I'm coming. Geez, you're just like your mother, aren't you?" Naruto spoke as he quickly followed behind her daughter Fariha. He doesn't remember when, but ever since Ana introduced her daughter to Naruto, her daughter started to become very clingy to him. It wasn't long until she started to call him dad though. When Naruto asked Ana about this, she explained that Fariha never met her father before. She also explained that her father died 2 months earlier before she was born, which left her in a horrible state of mind. This caused her daughter to be out of her care until she could get her mind straight. It wasn't long until she felt well enough to have Fariha back in her care though. After this, she soon enrolled in the military and, through hard work and dedication to be the top sniper, she was given an opportunity to be one of the first Overwatch agents in the world. He was soon interrupted from his thoughts about Ana once he saw Fariha stopping in her tracks before turning to face him. "Come on. We're almost there." She giggled before she ran off again. Naruto chuckled a bit. Once he turned towards the next hallway, he saw that both Fariha and Winston both disappeared. "Fariha, Winston, where are you guys?" Naruto asked out loud as he walked down the hall. "Over here." He heard. Turning around, Naruto barely caught a glimpse of Fariha entering the Overwatch auditorium. Not wasting time, he approached the door before opening it where he was greeted by nothing but darkness. Squinting his eyes a bit, he reached his hand towards the light switch next to him before flicking it on where he was then surprised by the sounds of confetti flying everywhere. Surprise. Everybody in the auditorium practically yelled. Happy birthday, Naruto. Naruto stood there shocked not knowing what to do at the moment. After a few seconds of laughter and cheering, Naruto let out a smile before rubbing the back of his head sheepishly. Winston and Fariha soon came up to him where they then grabbed his hands before dragging him off towards the rest of his team. On the way there, he was barraged by the words of happy birthday by his fellow agents. Ah, there's the birthday soldier we've been looking for. Naruto heard a familiar voice from the German man, Reinhardt, before he turned towards his direction. Tell me Naruto, how do you like this little surprise everyone here threw for you? Of course he would love it, Reinhardt. Did you even see his reaction when he turned on the lights? Anna stated as she looked at Reinhardt before looking towards Naruto. Besides, you know he practically enjoys everything we do together. Anna then walked up to Naruto before planting a kiss on his cheek. Think of that as your birthday present from me to you. But if you'd like, there's more to that than just a simple kiss. She whispered as she nibbled on his ear. Naruto flushed slightly as he placed a hand on the cheek Anna just kissed. He wasn't sure when, but after a few months of caring for her daughter at times when she couldn't, Naruto soon noticed the stares Anna has been giving him. They were filled with love. Love that he wasn't sure he could return. Don't get him wrong, Naruto does find Anna attractive and all, but he doesn't know if he'll give the love she wants from him. His thoughts were soon interrupted by the disgusted sounds of Anna's daughter. You just kissed Dad. Fariha stated as she made these weird disgusted faces. Anna giggled at her daughter's declaration. Oh, well mommies and daddies kiss all the time though sweetie. What's so wrong about that? It's gross. Fariha quickly replied. Well, how about mommy comes and get you before planting kisses all over your face? Anna remarked as she brought her palms up before making a claw-like gesture with her both hands. Fariha's eyes widened before she turned and bolted with Winston as her mom chasing them not too far behind them. Come on Winston. Run faster. Reinhardt and Naruto watched the three disappear into the crowd before giving off a laugh. Kids. You got to love those little devils. Reinhardt stated as his laugh slowly died. Yeah, they are something. Aren't they? Naruto smiled, not taking his eyes off the direction the three ran to. The two stayed quiet for what seemed like hours as they listened to the conversation around them. That is until one of them decided to speak up. So, Naruto, what do you think? Reinhardt spoke loud enough for the two to hear. Naruto turned his head questioningly towards the tank of their strike team. What do you mean? Of all this? How the United Nations suddenly chose us to be the first members of Overwatch. I mean, we were basically dragged out of our own military and placed here. Reinhardt stated as he looked Naruto straight in the eye. The world doesn't even know of us at all. What's the point in being in this organization anyway? Naruto rubbed the bridge of his nose as he heard this. You know Reinhardt. I thought the same thing too. I saw this organization as a waste of space that the UN created. But I know they must have a reason for it. After all, it wasn't long since the birth of Omnons came into this world. Maybe they just created Overwatch because they were afraid if the Omnons ever revolt against us. Reinhardt scoffed at this. Revolt. Ha, we humans created the Omnons. Why would they revolt against us? I wish I knew man, but for now, let's just wait a while and see where this leads us. Naruto suggested. Fine. I'll give them 10 to 15 years. If nothing happens in this certain time period, then I'll leave this organization and go back to Germany. Fair enough. That just gives us 10 to 15 years to get to know each other better. Naruto and Reinhardt both let out a heart-filled laugh at this declaration. Too bad they were interrupted by the sounds of metal clanking, and it was clanking fast. Turning to the direction all the noise was coming from, they both saw a short man with a long blonde beard hopping around as he sat on a turret. This man is Torbjorn Lindholm. Aha, look, it's the birthday boy. Torbjorn spoke as the turret wobbled back and forth from his weight. Torbjorn. Do you think what you're doing is safe? Naruto backed up a bit as well as Reinhardt. Of course it's safe. I built it, of course. Torbjorn spoke proudly. Before he can continue, sparks started to pop out of the turret as it made these horrible grinding sounds. This practically got everybody in the auditorium looking at him. Oh. Seeing what was about to happen, Naruto yelled out loudly. Everybody hit the deck. Everybody did what they were told while Reinhardt activated his barrier field for extra protection, for as soon as his shield started to come up, the turret started to go out of control as it started to fire bullets everywhere it could while Torbjorn held on to it for dear life. Ah. Suamabuiti he helped me. Torbjorn yelled as his body was being thrown around like a rag doll from his own turret. This went on for a full minute until the turret ran out of ammunition and collapsed on itself with Torbjorn coming with it. After a few seconds, everybody slowly started to stand back up from the sudden event. Looking around, there were practically bullet holes around the walls, tables, and chairs in the auditorium. Reinhardt soon deactivated his shield once he felt it was safe for himself and the people behind him. Good thing I brought my barrier shield with me. Reinhardt spoke to himself as he looked over the damage done in the auditorium. This eventually turned his thoughts into a conclusion about his Swedish friend. Note to self, bring my barrier shield wherever I go with Torbjörn. What did I say about bringing your artillery to events like this, Torbjörn? A male voice stated as the sound of footsteps approached the three. Reinhardt and Naruto turned toward the direction where they heard a man speak, only to see two men walking towards them. These two were the final two members that were offered a chance to be one of first to join a secret organization created by the UN. These two men were Jack Morrison and Gabriel Reyes. Torbjörn, however, stood on his knees as he looked upon his broken turret, ignoring John's question. My turret? He cried a bit. Morrison, Reyes, what a surprise to see you two here. Naruto extended his arm out, which John shook. You'd think we'd miss a friend's birthday party. Come on now, bud, we're not apathetic. Reyes crossed his arms and laughed. You sure proved me wrong. Naruto smiled. But knowing these two, he knows that they don't show up at any given moment unexpected. He put up his smile for a while longer until his face suddenly turned into a mixture of curiosity and seriousness. But I'm also guessing there's something you two wish to speak to me about. Jack and Gabriel looked at each other for a moment and then nodded. Yeah, once you're ready, come see us at command. From there we will discuss matters with you, and don't worry, nobody will know but us. Morrison spoke in a serious manner. He then turned and walked away with Reyes right behind him. He walked a few steps before stopping in his tracks. Oh, and Naruto, happy birthday. But that done and said, Morrison diverted his course towards the exit of the auditorium. Reyes looked at Naruto and gave a two-finger salute before he soon followed behind Morrison. What do you think that was about? Reinhardt asked as he stared oddly at the direction the two other agents left. I don't know, but I think I have a pretty good guess on what they're talking about. Naruto replied. He stared intently at where Morrison and Reyes were once at for a few moments before he diverted it back to his overgrown comrade. If anybody comes looking for me, tell them I'll be back shortly. Don't tell them anything else, do you understand? Ah, yes. You can count on me, friend. Now hurry along and do what you need to do. Knowing Reyes and Morrison for a short time, I can tell that they don't like waiting for long. Good, I'm counting on you, Reinhardt. Reinhardt only gave a nod as he watched Naruto showed himself out of the auditorium. The double doors that lead inside of the command center opened up, allowing Naruto to walk inside. Once he entered, he immediately noticed Morrison looking at some computer monitors with his back facing towards him. However, he grew wary when he saw no sign of Reyes. He looked around the room in order to spot the brown man, but couldn't find any sign of him anywhere. So you arrived. You came a little earlier than expected. What a surprise. But I guess you have your reasons. Morrison stated. Yeah, I wonder that myself. Naruto looked around for a few more seconds before turning his attention back to Morrison, who still had his back facing towards him. If I may ask, where's Reyes? I know he's somewhere around here. Morrison raised an eyebrow before turning around to face the blonde. And what makes you say that? Naruto turned his head to the left a little before smiling. Well, it's pretty simple. I can hear him, I can. Feel him. He's a sneaky bastard and I know he's one of the best, but he's not quiet enough. In a sudden burst of speed, Naruto disappeared and reappeared back in the same spot with Reyes next to him, shocking both of them. What shocked them a little more was that he did all of that in a blink of an eye. Well, that's how it seems to be. The hell just happened? Reyes stated once Naruto let him go. Alright, since we're all here now, and no one else is hiding, care to inform me on whatever you wanted to ask? Naruto stated as he brushed dust off himself. How? Nah, I asked a question here. So you're gonna answer? Naruto interrupted. Morrison, this seems like a bad call. Reyes spoke a bit frightened. Bad call? Stop funking around and answer my question. Reyes and Morrison looked at each other for what seemed like hours until one of them decided to speak up. Alright, to tell you the truth, we were given the order from the UN to search every agent's bunker within this base. They were concerned if any of them had any secret data file or criminal record kept from them. Reyes began. And so we followed their orders. We were gonna search everyone's bunkers while they weren't there a few days ago, but then we heard about the little party that was gonna be thrown for you a few days later and that everyone was practically gonna be there. So we held it off till then, since we figured it would be a perfect opportunity to search everyone's rooms in one go, without waiting for the perfect opportunity to search one room. Morrison continued. That's correct, so as soon as everyone left, we started to search through files, hardwares, computers, whatever we could find that seemed important in each bunker. Everything was going fine. Nobody was hiding anything or keeping secrets, it was perfectly clean. Well, that's what we thought until we entered your bunker. Reyes tried to laugh it off as if it was a joke. My bunker? Naruto narrowed his eyes at them. He kept this composure for a good while before giving out a stressful sigh as he placed a palm against his face. So how much do you know? Everything. Morrison replied. Naruto stood there for a while until he finally gave in. Alright, I guess there's no hiding it now, so what do you want to know? Really? Just like that? You're not gonna try and kill us for what we uncovered? Reyes cautiously stared at Naruto, waiting to see if he'll make a move on them. No. I don't just kill for fun, you know. If you'd like, you can even cuff me and send me to some high prison facility if that'll make you feel safe. You're bluffing. Reyes looked towards Morrison. He's bluffing. There's no way this is true. With what you can do, you can easily take us out. Reyes. Morrison spoke, gaining his friend's attention. He's not bluffing. Naruto eyed Morrison as he walked back to the computer monitors. Now we're just gonna be straightforward with what we want to know, Naruto. We don't need to give this information to the UN if you don't want us to. Like an old saying that goes along, if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, or something like that. I don't think that's necessary. Reyes mumbled to himself. Morrison paused his footsteps before turning his attention back to his fellow blonde. Why are you involved with the Shimada clan? What can you expect? They're one lively bunch. Naruto smirked as he thought about the clan. Though I don't really like the elders in the Shimada clan, they remind me too much of some old faces back in my birthplace. Naruto frowned at the thought of the elders back in old Konoha. He didn't even want to think of the elders that were part of the clans in the village. Some of them were ruthless bastards who deserved the most painful death there was. The elders that are part of the Shimada clan are no different, they're the same power-hungry bastards as the ones back in Konohagakure no Sado. But you do know of their status in the world, don't you? Morrison questioned. Naruto laughed at this. Of course I do. During the past years their power grew, enabling them to build a vast criminal empire that profit in illegal substances, lucrative trade in arms, and assassination. I also know the head leader of the clan, Sejiro Shimada, and his two sons, Hanzo Shimada and Genji Shimada. Those two are both one lively pair of kids, I can tell you that. I don't know when or how, but the clan head, including many of the members of the Shimada clan, accepted me as part of their family despite myself being an outsider. You can say that Sejiro and I are old friends. Naruto laughed at this before continuing. And before you guys can ask, I will not assist you guys on taking down the Shimada clan, despite my affiliation with Overwatch. I would rather stand with them than help you guys or anybody from the UN from waging war against the clan. Whoa, no need to get so hasty now. We weren't going to suggest that. Reyes laughed nervously. Good, it's not like you guys will stand a chance anyway. Naruto laughed at this, with Reyes and Morrison laughing nervously themselves. This laughter continued for a minute or two until it slowly dies down. But, I have to ask. How did you guys even figure out I'm involved with the Shimada clan? I'm pretty sure I didn't take anything with me that would raise suspicion about me being involved with them. Well. We figured it out through your email. Your friend Sejiro sent an email inviting you back to the Shimada castle in order to celebrate your birthday sometime this week. I guess you can say we read it on accident. Morrison stated. Ah, I see. Never thought I see Sejiro send an email at all. He usually send letters. I wonder what got him to send an email this time. So I'm guessing you're not gonna tell us anything else about the Shimada clan, huh? Morrison asked. Nope, that's all I will tell you guys. If you want anything more, go ask them yourselves. Well, unless you want hundreds of shurikens thrown at you the moment you step into their gate. Trust me, they did that to me, it was utterly terrifying to see. Naruto stated, earning surprised looks from the two soldiers. How'd you escape them? Reyes asked in curiosity. Duh, I'm physically faster than them. Morrison and Reyes face palmed at this. They should have known he would escape after what happened with Reyes being found in an instant. Now, since that's all you guys wanted to ask, I guess it's safe to say that this meeting is over. Naruto turned around before walking towards the exit. Come on. Let's get back to the party. I bet everybody's wondering where I am. Morrison and Reyes looked at each other for a brief second before shrugging their shoulders and following the inhuman blonde back to the birthday event going on that was thrown for him. Time skip, early morning, 1:30 a.m, Overwatch airfield. You sure you want to do this, kid? Morrison stated as he handed Naruto some of his personal belongings. Apparently Naruto decided to head back to the Shimada castle earlier on this week rather than later. Of course I do, they're family to me, Jack. Even though they're labeled as criminals to the world, I'll still have their backs no matter what. Besides, I'm just gonna be gone for 2 or 3 days. Nothing wrong with that. Naruto spoke as he tossed his luggage in the hatch of a plane. You might want to think this through though. And I don't mean the Shimada clan. Morrison said as he watched Naruto close the hatch. What do you mean? Well, you're basically leaving us without saying your farewells to anybody at all. Including Anna. Remember what happened when you didn't tell her where you were going a few months ago? Naruto shivered at the thought of it. Don't remind me. He walked toward the entrance of the plane before opening. Besides, what do you want me to say to them anyway? Hey, I just received an email from an old friend of mine that's the head leader of a criminal empire to come and celebrate my late birthday with him. I'll see you in a few days. Naruto shook his head. Sheesh, you don't need to be that straightforward with them. Morrison stated. Yeah, well funk you too. The two stood there laughing to their heart's content, unaware of the small figure peeking around the corner and looking right at them. Daddy? The soft voice of Fariha Amari was heard, causing the two agents to look in her direction. Fariha. What are you doing here? It's past your bedtime. Naruto stated before he started to walk towards her before kneeling to reach her height. Fariha walked outside with her pajamas and a pair of slippers on her feet as she held a falcon plushie in between her right arm while using her other to rub her eyes. You woke me up while I was sleeping. I couldn't sleep anymore, so I went to go find you so you can help me fall asleep again. Fariha brought her eyes up to meet her dad's eyes before speaking. What are you doing out here anyway? Nothing at all, I was just talking with Jack here. Naruto quickly responded as he pointed toward his blonde comrade. Morrison rolled his eyes at this before he decided to speak up. Come on, Naruto. Tell her the truth, it's not so bad after all. Don't be one of those secretive fathers that ends up getting distant from their family over time. Naruto sighed in hopelessness as he pressed the bridge of his nose. Should he tell her or not? If he does, who knows what she'll think. He thought about this for a long while before he finally gave in. Come here, Fariha. He gave a hand gesture for her to follow, which she did. Naruto soon sat down on a random crate before he picked Fariha up and set her on his lap. He then pulled out 2 photos he had in his pocket. He handed both of them to his stepdaughter before asking. Fariha, you see these 2 photos? I want you to look at them and tell me what you see. Fariha stared intently into one of the photos before she gasped in surprise and yelled excitedly. It's a castle. Naruto chuckled at this. Yes, that's correct, Fariha. You're a smart little girl, aren't you? Naruto ruffled her head, which she so happened to giggle. But how about the second one? Anything there you can tell me? Fariha stared at the second photo intently for a short while before turning her attention back to her father. It's just 2 boys and another man your age. Naruto smiled at this. Now that's where you're wrong, my little bird. This man right here is the one that owns this castle, so think of him as the king while these 2 boys are his sons. They are like the princes of this castle. Fariha looked at the 3 figures in the photo cautiously for a few seconds before asking, where's the queen then? The room grew quiet once those words were spoken. Naruto sat there quietly, unable to answer at the moment until eventually he finally did. The queen, well, she's not with them anymore. Let's just say she's in a much better place. Fariha accepted this answer from his father as she did not put much thought into it. Why are you showing me this? She asked soon after Naruto finished speaking. Now that is a good question. Why? Why is he showing this to her? Is it because she loves her that she wants her to know where he'll be for the next few days? Or is it because Jack was staring at him a few meters away? Maybe both. Naruto gave out a stressful sigh before he responded. Well, you see, Fariha. I'm showing this because, well, you're going to be gone for a few days, aren't you? A new voice made its presence known in the airfield. Naruto and Fariha, including Jack, turned their attention towards where they heard the new arrival, only to see Anna casually walking out of the dark. Hey Anna. Hey, I was gonna tell you an all but funny fact, it kinda slipped from my me. Naruto was interrupted when Anna pulled him in for a hug as she rested her chin on his shoulder. It's okay. I understand. They are important to you after all. Anna smiled as she leaned back from the hug. Her daughter came to her side and held her hand. Just like us. So this is where you people were hiding at, eh? A familiar Swedish accent was heard, catching the attention of the rest. As Naruto turned to look at his small comrade, he immediately noticed that he was not alone. Instead, he had 2 other friends accompanying him as well. They were, of course, Reinhardt and Gabriel. Ah, reunited again, my friends. It's good to see you all doing well. Reinhardt smiled at everyone. Good to see you as well, you big brute, even though it was a few hours since he last saw each other. Naruto laughed a bit. What can I say? I get lonesome when I have no one to talk to. Tell me about it, Reyes muttered as he rolled his eyes a bit, remembering moments when he passed by Reinhardt only for the brute to spot him almost seconds later before he can leave and ended up chatting excitedly with the Mexican. So, what's this commotion I hear about you leaving, Naruto? Torbjorn questioned, all while looking at the abnormal blonde with curiosity. It's exactly what you guys might be thinking. I'll be gone for a few days to visit some old friends of mine. Besides, it's not like I'm quitting this organization yet. We still haven't been called or released for any major crisis going on. Before he can continue on, Fariha tackled him and hugged while she burying her head in his stomach. I don't want you to go. Naruto looked surprisingly at Fariha before he smiled and chuckled softly. He then placed a palm on his daughter's head before ruffling it. Don't worry Fariha. I'll be back before you know it. If you'd like, I can bring you back something from my trip there. Really, she gleamed in delight. Tell me, what would you like me to bring back for you? Fariha pouted as she thought long and hard about what she wanted that she did not possess yet. It went on for few seconds before she turned back to her father. Anything. Make it a surprise. Tuckle alright, anything for you sweetheart. After all, my mistress deserves the best doesn't she? Naruto grinned before he started to tickle her body. Don'tcha? Hahaha. Stop dad. You know I'm ticklish. Fariha laughed as she tried to squirm her way out of her father's grasp. Unfortunately, Naruto wasn't gonna let that happen anytime soon. Like I said before. Kids. You gotta love 'em. Reinhardt muttered softly as the group of friends smiled at the sight of a father and daughter, happily bonding with each other. You ready to take off sir? A flight attendant asked once she saw Naruto coming aboard the plane. Definitely. Then please, have a seat and make yourself comfortable while I go tell the pilot we're ready to fly out. Understood. Naruto obliged with her request as she went to go inform the pilot. Naruto sat there for a few minutes until finally the plane started to make its way to the runway in order to take off. Once on the runway, it wasn't long until the plane started to pick up speed in order to get up in the air. As the plane kept going, Naruto looked out the window to his left only to see Anna, Reinhardt, Gabriel, Jack and Torbjorn all waving at him in farewell, while Fariha was waving at him from atop of Reinhardt's shoulders. He smiled at this and waved back at them until his plane was airborne and started to ascend up into the sky. He kept watching the place until the base was merely a small light of what it once was up close. Sliding the window coverage shut, he smiled and relaxed his body onto the seat as he thought of one thing only. Shimada Castle, here I come. Naruto stood by the gate staring long and hard at the twin dragons carved next to it. Just how many times has he seen this logo across Hanamura? At first he thought nothing of it, but after he realized that this symbol represented the dragons of the Shimada clan, it made him think twice of his consideration. After all, he did have his own symbol representing his own clan. But that symbol has long been extinct, buried along with the rest of his kind in a place no human can ever find. Somewhere that he himself cannot remember either. Yet that is a good thing as well, such history and use of power is much better off left undiscovered. After all, throughout time humans had made the same mistakes they will always make. It's not something so surprising to him anymore, no matter how hard he tried it was simply impossible for him to bring peace to the world. In the end, he gave up fighting for total peace. But he didn't give up fighting for peace itself. If it can't be total, at least it will be part. Naruto gave a soft smile before turning and walking towards the gate. As soon as he placed in within the open gate, dozens of ninjas came out of hiding as soon as they detected the intruder. However, they were surprised when they saw him. Naruto-sama dono. The ninjas cheered respectively as they clasped their hands together and bowed to him. Welcome back. Naruto smiled as he waved his hands to them. Hi. No need to get so formal with me you guys. How many times do I have to tell you? But we can't help it. You've been a great asset to us all including Sato-sama and his family. One managed to yell out. Yeah, you also helped train us to become better warriors in order to protect the Shimada castle and the clan. With your skillful teachings we became more liable to Sato-sama and his kin. Another said. We appreciate your service to us. Naruto nervously laughed as he scratched the back of his head sheepishly. He should be used to the praises by now, but they always managed to get to him, no matter how hard he tried not to let them. He doesn't have time to listen to our praises. He must be here because Sato-sama summoned him. Oh, you're right. Everyone stood up straight from their bound positions before allowing Naruto through. We apologize for taking up your time Naruto-sama. Sato-sama awaits your presence. It's alright really. It's been fun chatting with you guys. Naruto walked past them before he saluted them from behind. Keep up the morning practices though. You don't want to get rusty after all. We will. The men shouted. Man, what a great guy. I wonder if he can teach Genji-sama and Hanzo-sama to be as stronger than him. Maybe, Hanzo-sama will eventually lead the clan soon enough so we need a strong leader. Multiple ninja warriors nodded at this. What are you all blabbing on about? Get back to training. You guys don't want to deem useless to the clan do you? Another ninja warrior appeared before the rest, but unlike everyone else, this one wore a much different outfit that seemed much more superior to the rest. Hi, Taicho. And within the blink of an eye, the main courtyard of the Shimada castle became empty, leaving no trace of human contact within it. The sound of Naruto's footsteps were all anyone could have heard as he entered the dojo. It was odd for him to be the only person you could have heard. It was almost as if everything was quiet. Too quiet. As he walked deeper within the dojo, he never heard the sound of a person above him getting ready to strike down from above. In one swift motion, the person silently jumped off the balcony with a katana raised in the air as he descended down upon Naruto. And then he swung. Clang. Ara, you think I wouldn't notice you attack me from above? Naruto stared at his attacker with a kunai in hand, blocking his attack. Genji-kun. The now named Genji didn't reply, but instead reeled back his sword and started to swing efficiently everywhere he could at the blonde ninja, making him back up little by little. This went on for a good minute or so until Genji was knocked down and restrained by the older ninja, with his own sword pointing towards his neck. Feel Genji. Genji only smirked, instead confusing Naruto in the long run. You let your guard down, Naruto Nai. Just then Naruto heard the sound of a bow releasing an arrow behind him, making him smile in the process. Good job, you two. Genji didn't get to contemplate on what just happened next when he saw Naruto holding his brother's arrow in his hand. Looking to his left, Genji saw Hanzo on the ground in the same position as him as he too tried to process what just happened. They didn't, however, once they saw Naruto with both Hanzo's bow and arrows and Genji's katana, as well as his smaller blade in his hands. No fair, Nai-sama. You used your powers to take us down. Genji whined as he sat there with his arms and legs crossed. That's cheating. There is no honor in taking us down by surprise. Hanzo crossed his arms and legs as well as he turned his head away from him. Naruto smiled at them before laughing. Combat is filled with unfairness however you look at it. You two will become ninjas or assassins once you two grow up anyway. It's a good thing your father started to teach you about stealth while I'm gone. Still, that's no excuse for you to use your superpowers. You're still gonna come out on top either way. Genji stated. I know. Naruto smiled at them before tossing them back their weapons. You two are improving your skills though. I'm glad. Hanzo smiled a little at his praise, while Genji gave a bigger smile instead. Genji was around Fariha's age, only a few years older than her, while Hanzo was a little older than Genji himself. Even though the two Shimada brothers were born and raised to fight and kill for this clan, the two still manage to have time to goof around whenever they can. It reminded Naruto of himself when he was younger. Sure, he killed, but he was still a goofball in the end. You betya. If I'm gonna surpass you one day, Naruto Nai, I would have to get stronger. Stronger than I am today. Genji said, causing Hanzo to roll his eyes on his brother's declaration. Just how many times has he heard him say that this past year? It has to be more than 100, that's for sure. Say, Naruto-sama. It's not like I'm not glad you're not here. But what brings you back to the Shimada castle? Hanzo questioned. Naruto stood there for a good while before he slumped down in defeat with a depressing gloom showering over him. He doesn't remember. He doesn't remember. He doesn't remember. What Naruto was repeating in a low voice, causing Hanzo to panic a little. Hey? Naruto-san, what's wrong? Hanzo panicked on seeing Naruto in such a state. Just then Genji and Hanzo heard the familiar sound of their father laughing loudly. Ahahaha. You're really gonna have a child put you in such a state just because he forgot your birthday? Sojiro made himself none as he walked down the steps. I expected better from you, Naruto. Wait, so that's why he was like this? Hanzo questioned as a sweat drop formed on the right side of his head. How come I never knew when his birthday was? Well, his birthday was yesterday. We're just throwing a late party for him to make up for our absence. Sojiro stated. And for your question. Well, you never asked. That's no reason to keep that from us. Hanzo yelled dramatically. Hi. Sojiro waved off. No matter though, you know now and I'm trusting you two will remember next time. Hi, Tusan. The Shimada brothers spoke simultaneously. The two stood quiet until Genji spoke up. Tusan. What is it, Genji? Is that why I saw some of the servants decorating the large dining room? Genji asked. We haven't used that room in such a long time now. Sojiro nodded at this. Yes, that's exactly why. We'll be having a big feast with the entire clan as well as some very close friends at dusk. So that means you two have an entire day to do whatever you'd like until then. Really, no lessons today? Genji spoke excitedly while Hanzo frowned a little. That's right, Genji. Just be back here before dusk. Alright. Genji cheered. Hey Naruto, wanna go to the arcade with me? I always wanted to go, but Tusan wouldn't allow me to go by myself. Naruto looked at Sojiro for permission only to see the clan head nod his head. He looked back at the kid before responding. Alright, I'll go with you. Yes. Wait here. I'm gonna go get my money from my room. With that said, Genji turned and ran from the three, leaving them to themselves for the time being. As soon as Sojiro saw Genji disappear around the corner, he turned his attention towards his eldest son, only to see him looking down at the ground frowning, causing himself to frown a bit as well. Hanzo, son, is something bothering you? Yes, no. Hanzo shook his head a little. It's just, is it really a great idea to take a day off? I mean, I'm the next head to the Shimada clan, and well as the next clan leader, I believe it is necessary for me to focus on my training in order to properly control the dragons. Sojiro closed his eyes and nodded his head in acknowledgement at his proclamation. However, as soon he opened, he spoke a word catching Hanzo by surprise. Nonsense. Hanzo stared at his father with slightly wide eyes. Sojiro sighed before speaking. Hanzo, as much as I acknowledge your will to continue training, you're still young. You'll have plenty of time to continue your training later. He then placed a hand on Hanzo's shoulder. What I want for you is the best, yes. But that also means I want you to enjoy yourself while you're still a child. After all, once you become older and lead this clan alongside your brother, you'll have much more responsibilities than ever. Sojiro took his hand off before smiling. Besides, who says you can't train by yourself from time to time? Hanzo stared at his father in slight shock before smiling and bowing to him. Hi, Tusama. Alright. Sojiro then turned to Naruto. Make sure you take Hanzo along with you to the arcade. Wah. I understand. I'll assure you no harm will come to them while we're gone. Naruto interrupted Hanzo. Wait a minute, Ina. I trust your word for it. Like I said earlier to the Genji though, just be back before dusk. Sato interrupted his son. I'm back. Genji yelled out with a small pouch of yen strapped to his shorts. Ah, Genji, good news. Your brother is coming along with you to the arcade. Sojiro informed. But I never agreed to. Sojiro smacked his hand over Hanzo's mouth, keeping it shut before he can finish. Really? Alright, let's go Nai-san, Naruto Nai. Genji then turned and ran towards the exit, with Naruto dragging Hanzo behind him, while the eldest Shimada kept on yelling profanities at the blonde to unhand him. Take care you three. Sojiro waved at them until they disappeared from his sight. Not a moment later he started to cough uncontrollably into his sleeve. He then reached into his kimono and took out a handkerchief before wiping his mouth with it. After wiping his mouth, he took a look at his handkerchief only to the blood he coughed up staining it. So, it's getting worse, huh? Sojiro spoke saddened. He then tucked his handkerchief back into his kimono before walking away from the dojo speaking to himself. I'm sorry Genji, Hanzo, it seems like neither I can avoid the inevitable. However, Naruto heard what Sojiro said from a distance and he couldn't help but frown on knowing what his friend was talking about. He looked back at the Shimada castle and thought to himself. Take care, old friend. Time skip a few minutes later. As soon as Naruto, Genji, and Hanzo entered the arcade, various sounds of different arcade machines filled their ears. Sounds of racing, fighting, shooting, and tickets prizes being won were the primary sounds everyone could hear. Kids were running around in order to see what game they'll be able to play next, while some others were waiting in line to try some of the more popular games. Hell, there were even people hanging around with friends in the indoor cafe, chatting or waiting for a chance to play some other game they've been waiting for. So this is an arcade, huh? Genji spoke out loud as he looked around the place with Hanzo and Naruto by his side. Kids are actually wasting their time here rather than training. Hanzo scowled a bit. No wonder there aren't a lot of great warriors nowadays. Now Hanzo. They are kids after all. I remember I used to do similar things when I was about your age. Naruto informed. Gosh. Genji spoke. Where do we start? Hanzo and Naruto looked at each other for a moment before looking back at Genji. Don't ask us. You're the one that wanted to come here. Hanzo said. I'm just here to look after you too. Naruto voiced his own opinion. You guys are no help, you know that. Genji sighed before he started to look around the place, deeming what game he should start first. After a few moments, he finally decided. I choose that one. He pointed out. Naruto and Hanzo looked at what he was pointing at only to see that it was a fighting game. Two players fight each other with their deciding characters in order to see who comes out top. And by the looks of it, there was quite the crowd gathered around there. Are you sure? There seems to be quite a crowd gathered around there. Naruto rose an eyebrow at the youngest Shimada. Genji only nodded his head before he started to walk in that general direction. As Hanzo was about to follow Genji, Naruto placed a hand on his shoulder, causing him to stop and look up at him. Keep an eye on Genji for me, will ya? I'll be back in a moment. Naruto asked. Instead of asking where he was going, Hanzo only nodded his head in agreement before watching the blonde ninja walk away from him, deeper into the arcade. After that, he then turned and started to follow the direction in which his little brother headed towards a moment ago. KO. Hanzo heard from the arcade machines once he reached his brother. Better luck next time, noob. Not like you stood a chance anyway. They heard the winning player taunt the losing player. Yeah. They heard the losing player mumble to himself as he walked away. Funkin' beepy motherfinker. Seriously, why can't any of you people give me a challenge? You all are too easy. The winning player looked at the players waiting in line in order to defeat him with little interest in his eyes. "What's with him?" Hanzo mumbled to his little brother. "I don't know. From what I've heard he's been defeating people left and right for a while now. On top of that, he always makes fun of the losing player, saying that they're not good and should stop coming here altogether. Apparently he anger a lot of people here, causing them to start challenging him in order to wipe that smirk off his face." Genji looked at the ongoing scene with examining eyes. "I wanna fight him." "What the hell are you saying? You've never even played a single arcade game in your life and you wanna go against someone that's been defeating his opponents non-stop?" Hanzo spoke in disbelief. "There's no way you can win." Genji shrugged his shoulders, not caring what the outcome of his actions will be. "I won't know if I don't try." With that said, Genji walked towards the empty seat that opposed the unbeatable player. This caught at least everyone's attention, including the winning player himself. "Hey, kid. What do you think you're doing?" the unbeatable player next to him questioned. "This game ain't for people such as yourself. Run along and play some of those simple kiddie games, will ya? Let the big boys handle games like these." "No thank you. I think I'll play." "Ah, so we got a tough one, don't we?" The player laughed a bit. "Well, you're wasting everyone's time just by sitting here, so I guess I'll have to make this quick. Don't go crying back to your mommy after I destroy you." The player then took out a token from his pocket before propping it in the machine. After that, his screen changed words stating "waiting for opponent." He then looked back at Genji. "Hurry up, insert your token so we can get this started." Genji, however, looked at the player in confusion. "Token? What's a token?" Hanzo face-palmed hearing what his little brother said. "No way." The player then started to laugh at Genji's stupidity. "Don't tell me you came here without purchasing any tokens. Man, you're one of those newbies." The player then continued to laugh, causing Genji to get annoyed at this. "Might as well leave now, kid. You're just gonna waste everyone's time if you just sit there." Hanzo was about to step forward in order to retrieve his brother, but a hand was suddenly placed on his shoulder, keeping him from doing so. He looked up only to see Naruto smiling a little before he started to walk towards Genji. "Boy, Genji. I think you forgot these." Genji turned to look at who called him only to find himself catching a bag of tokens instead. He looked up at who tossed him this only to smile to see that it was Naruto. "Arigato, Naruto Nai." Naruto nodded in return. Genji then turned back to the machine before he inserted a token as well, causing the screen to change for him. "Choose your character," was what the two machines spoke out. It didn't take long for the two to choose their own characters. "Round 1. Might as well give up now, kid. You stand no chance." The player taunted. "Fight." Not even 20 seconds later into the match, the people suddenly heard KO. The crowd looked at this in slight shock to see Genji come out victorious for round 1. Holy shit, did he just? Yeah, I think he did. Who the hell is that kid? Meanwhile, Genji's opponent looked at his own screen in shock. He just got totally destroyed in round 1 and the fight didn't even last half a minute. You just got lucky, kid. I wasn't even looking at my screen at the moment." The player made up a random excuse. "But you were clearly playing, so doesn't that mean you were looking at the screen?" Genji's sweat dropped a bit. "Shut up." The player yelled out in a mixture of embarrassment and anger as well as arrogance. "I won't take you lightly on round 2, so you better be ready." He then turned back to his screen waiting for the second match to load him. "He'll show that little runt. No one messes with him in this game. He's the top player at this category in the entire arcade. There was no way he can lose to a kid." To make it worse, the kid was a noob himself. That's just embarrassing to all types of players. Round 2. The crowd stood quiet waiting for the match to start. Most of them were interested that this kid can actually beat this dude, while some others believed he just won the first round out of pure luck and will no doubt lose the next 2 rounds. They didn't have to wait long for the fight to commence though. Fight. Both players equally started to mash on their buttons and control stick until suddenly everyone heard the ending sound of a player's defeat. KO. Player 2 wins. Was the sound that echoed out through the crowd's ears. He won. The crowd stood quiet for a moment until they suddenly broke it with a sound of excitement. Sugoi. This kid is awesome. The second round ended much faster than the first round. Just who is this kid? Is there actually someone with such gaming skill in this world? That's just amazing. Genji gave a big grin at all the compliments he was hearing behind him. It did feel good to earn such praise from a lot of people. However, such thoughts were put aside once he heard the player he defeated throw a tantrum in a fit of rage. "Brah. That's not fucking possible. You must be using hacks or something. There's just no way someone like me can get code so quickly. No funking way. Using hacks at an arcade. Now that's just a joke." Genji shrugged off his defeated opponent's rage before speaking. "I guess I'm just that good. What can I say? I was naturally gifted. Naturally gifted my ass. I want a funking rematch. There is just no way you're this good, it was just all luck. The defeated player demanded. Genji closed his eyes and smiled for a bit before opening them and looked at his opponent in the eyes. Alright. A few minutes later has passed since the rematch was declared and half a minute has passed since he defeated his opponent for the 7th time. After that time however, the player just got up from his chair and stomped angrily out of the arcade, yelling curses about a stupid game and kid using hacks all the way out. As soon as he was gone, Genji burst out laughing with a few other people before Naruto came over and placed an arm on his shoulder. Congrats on your victory Genji, even though I thought you and that other person were just playing for fun at the moment. Naruto then looked at the screen Genji used to fight his opponent in his round before reading what it said. Looks like you just bumped down that player to 2nd place and took his place instead. It seems it's asking for your name as well. Genji looked at the screen Naruto pointed out and saw that what he pointed out was correct. What do you think I should call myself? He looked at Naruto. Naruto however looked at Genji in confusion. Don't ask me, it's your victory. He then placed a hand on his chin before thinking long and hard. After a moment or two, he suddenly decided upon a name before typing it in and pressed enter. Naruto looked at what name Genji chose to call himself before reading it out loud. GN. G, huh. He rubbed his chin smiling. Not bad. Genji smiled before looking at Naruto. He then noticed that someone was missing, by someone he meant his older brother. Naruto Nai. Where's Nai-san? Oh, Hanzo. I believe he's. Just then the two heard the sound of winner being called out repeatedly. The two looked towards the source only to see Hanzo with a fake bow and arrow, staring blankly at the target he just hit as tickets started to pour out and cover him. For a moment, Genji and Naruto looked at the eldest Shimada until they both burst out into a fit of laughter, causing other people around them look at the two oddly. The day is still young for the three, and in the meantime a new legend was born into the gaming world along the streets of Hanamura, where stories of this legend will continue to be told until it has been forgotten along with the rest of others. However, this gaming legend will die as quickly as it has came, only to be replaced by a much bigger one. For now though, he will continue to enjoy the time he's spending with his brethren until the time has come to bid each other farewell once again. Flashback end. Snapping out of his memories, Naruto gazed across the great snowy plains and valleys at Mount Makalu. It was a fascinating sight to witness, he even remembers the first time he's been up here. But in that time, he wasn't alone. He had friend, an Omnic friend which he can say has to be one of the most wisest Omnic monks he's ever came across. This Omnic's name was Zenyatta. A friend he's been associated with for quite a long time and helped assisted him into bringing his student, Genji, back to his senses. He was a peaceful, trustworthy friend. But when necessary, this peaceful monk can surely kick some ass. But that is a story for another time. After all, we have plenty of time to get into his story later in the future. Even after disappearing from Overwatch's eyes and his friends associated within it, Naruto still kept on the prowl, helping people however he can in any sort of way, even in desperate times, all while avoiding those two sneaky friends of his from pinpointing his exact location. He couldn't believe it, after all these years those two were the only former agents that wouldn't stop searching for him desperately. Not like the others don't, it's just these two put more time and effort in locating him. He let out a small chuckle as he thought about these two friends of his. Genji Shimada and Lena Oxton. Genji was one to never give up on him, his will to go on was just as great as when he was a child. Even after fighting against his clan, Genji still kept that one goal in mind since he was a kid. To surpass Naruto or at least be on par with him. It was a childish thing to even think about, but what can he say? He was the same when he was a young child as well. That was why Genji was the only person to have success in nearly finding him. Lena, however, was a different reason. She was an odd one to be clear. When he first met her, he remembered her two main reasons on why she joined Overwatch's flight program. It was because ever since she was a little girl, she always dreamt of flying high above the clouds, helping people however she could. It was her goal. Her life. Her ambition. Her second reason, instead, were mainly prioritized around people like Naruto. Always fighting the good fight no matter the cost. I guess that's how he noticed her feelings rapidly growing for him. Just like the others. She was a cheeky one, of course, he had to admit it. He can see why Winston and Lena became best friends so quickly, much more quickly than when Fariha and Winston met each other when they were young. It was as if the two were destined to look out for one another. Such thoughts were erased from his head once he heard a sudden beacon blinking in his bag. He knew what the sound was, and he couldn't help but frown a bit on wondering why he kept it on him. Grabbing his bag and reaching inside of it, Naruto extracted the beacon from inside, only to look at it with sadness. So you finally initiated recall, eh Winston? He was a fool for not dispatching this when he had the chance. He had no purpose on keeping it, so why? Why did he have it on him? That's something he couldn't answer for sure. At least, not yet. He looked at the beacon for a few moments before crushing it in his hand and allowing it to fall on the snow-covered floor. Sorry kiddo. I can't allow you to pinpoint my exact location right now. At least not yet. Naruto reached into his bag and pulled out a long-sleeved t-shirt before putting it on. He then quickly gathered his things before placing them back in his bag. He strapped it onto his back and took one last look at the snowy plains from atop the mountain. After a few moments, he vanished from sight and was already miles away from the mountain. The snow was already doing its job and covered any form of tracks he so happened to leave behind. Establishing agent connections. Winston stared in delight and awe as familiar faces were being brought up from around the holographic earth. He looked from top to bottom as old friends kept piling in, showing their exact location they are currently holding up in. All from the angelic-looking Mercy to the noble tank crusader Reinhardt and the deadly cyborg ninja Genji. All of them were finally going to be reunited at last. He let out a huge smile as he waited patiently for anyone to answer his call. Well, that is until he settled upon one. While Winston stared in shock. It can't be. Right before his eyes, on the border between China and Nepal, was one of his caretakers when he was still a young ape. Naruto. He muttered. However, before he can even do anything, Naruto's icon suddenly disappeared from the holographic world, causing him to yell out in frustration. No. Seeing if he can attempt to bring back Naruto's signal. Winston immediately hopped onto the computer, causing Athena to look on in worry for the scientist. Winston, what's the matter? Athena, good, I finally found him. I found Naruto, but his signal was cut off for some apparent reason. See if you can help me bring it back. Please. Winston spoke pleadingly. I have to tell him. He has to know. Winston kept his focus on his computer typing away like crazy. It wasn't his fault. Winston, please stop putting yourself through this. I know your relationship between Naruto, and I can say that it is not a healthy one at the moment. You can't just go running around looking for him whenever you feel like it. You barely even come back without a clue at all. I have to. Winston still kept typing furiously. After a moment, a red outline of words in his computer screen popped up saying connection failed. However, he didn't give up, he still kept at it for a few more times, until he's finally had enough. Why? He slammed his hands on the table angrily. The signal has gone offline. Winston. I'm sorry, but it seems like he either deactivated it or destroyed it. There's nothing we can do to contact him now. Even if you immediately set out to his last known coordinates ASAP, he will no doubt be long gone before you can even get there. Winston looked down with a questioning gaze. He let out a stress-filled sigh as he thought about this. Does Naruto really not want to be found? Is he trying to cut off ties with everyone he's made since his time here? But why? Winston looked to his right to gaze at the damaged Room Reaper and Talon soldiers caused around here. He let out another sigh in sadness. Athena. Winston hesitated for a moment, but he finally asked. Do you think Naruto avoids everyone because he doesn't want anything to do with us? Winston frowned as he gazed upon an old picture of them together. Does he not care about us anymore? Athena kept quiet for a moment, not knowing what to say. After a long while she finally answered no. I don't believe that is true. If anything, I believe that's the last thing he would do to you all. He would still go against it even if it's his last option. It's just not in his nature. Then why doesn't he come back to us? Everything changed so much after he defected. It's just not the same without him. Winston sounded like he was on the verge of tears. Something that has not occurred ever since Overwatch's disbandment. Oh, Winston. Athena thought to herself, saddened. She might be a computerized helper that Winston built to help assist him on his projects and was normally not supposed to feel such emotions, but she just couldn't help it. It seemed like something within her database malfunctioned itself to be able to read and feel human emotions like those she met during her time. He'll come back again. You just have to be patient. Just then a sudden beeping sound was heard, causing Winston to perk up in confusion. He gazed around the room confusingly. Athena. What is that? Athena have gave an inward smile, if she could even smile, before answering. Someone has answered your call and she'll be coming back in no time. Shall I answer it for you? Winston, however, walked towards his computer in order to see who answered his recall initiation in such a short time. What he saw made him smile in happiness, causing his sorrow to dissipate at the moment. He pushed his glasses onto his face before responding to Athena's question. That won't be necessary. Before Athena can even say anything, Winston linked the call with his old-time warping friend. Winston. Is that you, love? The familiar voice of Lena Oxton rang through his ears like music as she giggled a bit in delight. It's been too long. Winston smiled as he stared at the familiar icon of Lena Oxton on his computer screen. Yes. Yes, it has. Even though he won't be seeing one of his father figures in a while, at least he will have part of his family restored for the time being. And that's all he asks for. Little does he know, he will eventually reunite with the one he cherished for so long sooner than he expected. After almost an hour of non-stop sprinting, Naruto suddenly appeared a few miles at the outskirts of a city within Korea. He looked upon the city with little to no interest at all, considering that like almost all cities, this city as well shared its same hatred towards Omnics, even if it was a small portion. At least it's not Russia. Last time he remembered, Omnics were not welcome there at the slightest ever since the crisis began and ended. Maybe their way of viewing Omnics is different now. Who knows? Speaking of the Omnic crisis, he remembered the start of the war very well, and like all wars, it was war that will live in infamy for decades to come. Shutting his eyes for a moment, then opening, he released a breath before he started his journey toward city, all while recalling what he remembered in that tragic day. Flashback, years later after Naruto's visit to the Shimada castle. It has been a few months since the Omnica Corporation was shut down, including the development of any new Omni-Ums. Even though one might ask, why were they shut down? Well, it was mainly because of fraud. Fraud for what though? That is a question I don't have an answer for. All they knew, all anybody knew at the moment was that the creators of the Omni-Ums were facing severe consequences for their actions. Those Omni-Ums that were still a work in progress were deactivated and left to rust without the tend of their needs. Factories were abandoned, leaving nothing but unfinished work within them. It was like a ghost town, but smaller. Most of the general public wanted to tear down these factories and build other necessities that can be liable to them in the future. Others wanted these factories to remain, believing that they would once again start to produce more Omni-Ums in order to continue building economic equality worldwide. And the minority of them didn't really care on what happened to these factories. Little did they know, it was a matter of time before they will soon realize that these Omni-Ums weren't indeed shut down like they thought they were, and will soon launch a military campaign against all of humanity that will leave a huge scar in its history books. In an unknown hideout within the US, where the current members of the non-existent Overwatch remained at the moment, 3 men and a woman were seated within a room inside the secret facility, chatting away with each other without a care in the world. And Zhen, through honorable combat against some of my fellow crusaders in Xi Arena, I was chosen to leave and become a part of Xi's unknown organization in order to represent the noble crusaders of Ichenwald. Torbjorn interrupted as he rolled his eyes annoyingly. We heard you tell the same story hundreds of times these past years. Hold your feathers, Reinhardt. Reinhardt let out an awkward laugh as he rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Anna, who smiled in amusement, voiced her own opinion. Well, I find Reinhardt's story intriguing, no matter how many times I listen to it. Isn't that right, Naruto? She looked at the man sitting on her right only to see him lightly snoring in his sleep. He wasn't even listening. Reinhardt and Torbjorn both thought as a sweat drop formed on their foreheads. The two then looked towards Anna only to see her left eyebrow twitching. Now she's angry, they both thought again. Anna got up from the couch before walking over to a wall that had a small light metal pole leaning against it. She picked it up before walking back towards Naruto, causing the two men to wince knowing what's gonna happen. The two then noticed that Anna was specifically aiming at Naruto's crotch. Now that's just overkill. The two yelled in their heads. In one sudden motion, Anna brought her arm down that carried the metal pole right between Naruto's pair of legs. After that, one only knew what happened next. Naruto fell on the floor from the couch holding his respective jewels while groaning in unimaginable pain. Seeing this action, Reinhardt and Torbjorn winced as they sworn they could have heard a crushing sound upon Anna's impact. Why do my testicles hurt even though I wasn't the victim? Torbjorn placed both hands on his crotch. Because we know Xi pain he's going through right now. Reinhardt contorted. He held both hands on his crotch just like Torbjorn's. It's just his is much worse. After a minute or two has passed by, Naruto finally gathered the strength to wheeze out a single word. Why? Anna looked away, still angry at him. Haven't I told you not to sleep in the middle of a discussion before? When will you ever learn from your actions, Naruto? Naruto slowly rose up from the floor as he used the couch to support himself. Hey, it wasn't my fault I didn't get much sleep last night, he exclaimed. Fariha and Winston kept me up with their shenanigans. After I told you to put them to bed hours ago. They're teenagers, Naruto. They can't be staying up late all the time. She immediately stated. He rubbed his head apologetically. Yeah, but they're at that time of age. You know, when they rebel against their guardians' curfews. Besides, what's to say they won't stay up late night without us knowing? It's only logical. If they're tired early in the morning then so be it. That doesn't mean you should stay up with them. You have your duties around here as well. I suggest you start taking responsibility for your actions. Hi, whatever you say, Mom. He mimicked. He then turned his attention towards his male companions, specifically the shortest one. He never noticed Anna muttering gibberish under her breath in slight annoyance. So, Torbjorn, how's the Titan project going on within the Ironclad Guild? You guys finished designing it yet? Yes, we finished designing it already. In fact, we finished building a dozen of them months ago. Torbjorn crossed his arms as and closed his eyes. You asked that question many times already. It's starting to get really annoying hearing the same question pop up a dozen times a month. Especially when more than half the time those exact words come straight from your mouth and your mouth alone. That's not true. Naruto then turned and looked at the other two with a questioning gaze. Is it? Almost all the time. Anna confirmed. He then looked at Reinhardt. It's true. He immediately said. Naruto looked up and thought before speaking. Maybe I recently developed shorter memory loss. I highly doubt it. Torbjorn gave him an odd look. Someone such as yourself could never gain shorter memory loss. You're just lazy is all. Yeah, I'm aware of that. No use in hiding it. Naruto closed his eyes, smiling a bit. He then looked at all three members in the room. So, what do we do now? The four looked at each other for a moment in thought. But before they can even utter a single word, the door suddenly flew open as Jack and Reyes came barging in with such serious looks plastered upon their faces. Turn on the TV. Now. Jack demanded as he shut the door behind him. Why? Is there something wrong? Anna asked as she grabbed the remote before turning the television on. That's correct, the world is going through utter chaos right now, and the bad part is Reyes narrowed his eyes as he watched the TV fully load its broadcast. Nobody saw it coming. What next took Anna, Reinhardt and Torbjorn by surprise as they stared in shock while Naruto narrowed his eyes at the screen. There in front of them burning brightly for all the world to see was a skyscraper, and just below that skyscraper were civilians running for their lives as started to emerge from within it. Breaking news in Los Angeles, California, the skyscraper to Neon's Enterprises, which was once an factory, has been recently attacked by an Reasons for this whereabouts are currently unknown, as well as any other future attacks. A woman on a helicopter informed as it circled around the building. Police have been informed of this attack and will shortly air. Just then the top left portion of the skyscraper blew up, causing the woman to scream in fright. It seems that a large portion of the skyscraper's roof has blown up, sending rubbles of it down. Wait a minute. Are those bastion units? The camera pointed downwards towards the entrance of the skyscraper, only to see bastions flooding out through the windows and doors with their respective weapons. It wasn't long until chaos fully erupted as they started firing upon any human being they before them. Oh my god. They're killing people, but why? Just then two bastion units noticed the helicopter flying above them. In a moment's notice, the two bastions reconfigured into their sentry turrets before unloading bullets on the aircraft above them. Get us out of here. The woman screamed at the pilots. The pilots were just about to do that until one of the bastions shot the tail wing off, causing the helicopter to start spin uncontrollably. We're going down. The co-pilot yelled. Brace yourselves. The helicopter continued to spin until it hit the ground, bringing the television screen nothing but static. The sound of static from the television were the only thing anyone could hear as the six tried to process what they just witnessed. What the hell just happened? Anna was the first to speak up. I'm wondering that as well. But most importantly, why were there bastion units inside the skyscraper? Torbjorn said. Don't you get it, friends? The United States is being attacked. Reinhardt stated. It's not just the US. Reyes informed, causing everyone but Morrison to look at him in confusion. Jack took this time to speak up. Hong Kong, Tokyo, South America, Central America, Europe, Russia, Asia, almost the entire world are being surprise attacked by bastion units within 10 minutes ago. The factories that were left to rust were somehow reactivated, where it then started to create military units in secret without any of us knowing. Jack then narrowed his eyes before continuing. Ladies and gentlemen, the Omni have no doubt declared war against all of humanity. Reyes then closed his eyes before speaking. The UN will no doubt send us in sooner as a last resort. We can only wait for orders until then, but in the meantime he then turned his attention towards the Egyptian sniper. You know what to do. Anna perked up in realization. She then frowned, knowing what he meant by it, before nodding in agreement. Action was about to partake soon, and she couldn't have Fariha sticking with her any longer. Not when war was about to erupt any moment now. I understand. Anna then turned and headed towards the door. She stopped when she was standing in front of it. I'll be sure to tell her to pack her things. She then opened the door, stepped out, and closed it behind her. What about Winston? Naruto asked in his current sitting position. Shouldn't we have him pack as well? Jack closed his eyes. I wish we could, but sadly I'm afraid that there's no place we can send him off. He's stuck with us until further notice. Jack then looked at Naruto in the eyes. Besides, he is a genetically modified young gorilla. Intelligent as well, hell, he even built the jump pack a year ago so he can reach higher ground quickly. Naruto let out a sigh. Yeah, that is true. He then placed a hand on his cheek. I'm just worried about his safety. Harold did tell me to take care of him until he can handle his own. And I think you should soon start training him in combat. Have him use that jump pack of his as a battle strategy of some sort. If you can do that, he'll be sure to handle his own while we're out in the field. Reyes advised. After a second of thought, Naruto responded. I guess you're right. He stayed seated for a moment before he got up and headed towards the door. Where are you going? Jack asked before he can open the door. I'm going to prepare for what's coming. I can't get too rusty while I'm out there. Not when there's a threat towards all of humanity. He then excused himself from the room, leaving the four men to themselves. Sharing a glance to each other, Torbjorn, Reinhardt, Jack and Reyes all gave a nod before they too exited the room to prepare for what's coming. War is upon them. And it won't show any signs of stopping for years to come. The next day, 4:00 a.m. The sound of an airplane was heard roaring to life as various members of the soon-to-be first strike team of Overwatch gathered around to say their goodbyes to a teenage girl, Fariha. Do I really have to go, Mom? Where would I even stay anyway? Fariha asked as she carried her luggage in hand and a duffel bag strapped to her back. Fariha, as much as I don't want to send you off by yourself. This is for your own good and safety. I will be tending to a lot of duties soon and I'm afraid that we can't keep you here anymore. Anna informed. You'll be living with your grandparents back in Egypt for a while until further notice. Be a good girl and stay strong for your mother, okay? Be nice to your grandparents as well. I understand, Mom. I just can't believe this is happening. She placed a hand on her arm as she looked down. Anna looked at her daughter before she knelt in front of her. Fariha, through these past years I've watched you grow up into a strong, beautiful young woman. Just like me when I was your age. I know this might seem scary to you, leaving on your own to go back to a country you haven't lived in since you were a little girl. But you also must understand that I have no choice. When they allowed me to bring you along with me here, it was only for you to stay unless the time of war has set down upon us. Now that that has happened, you must go before it is too late. I cannot guarantee that I can keep you safe here forever, so that's why your grandma and grandpa will be taking care of you until it's all over. Anna then removed a pendant that she kept around her neck before placing it around her daughters. I want you to have this. It was given to me by my mother and was given to her by her own mother. Now I'm giving it to you. Fariha looked at the pendant for a moment before she looked back up at her mother. Remember, Fariha, I will always love you. No matter where you are or who you become. I will always love you. When you get older, fight for justice just like your mother. Fariha let out a few tears before she suddenly latched onto her mother for a hug. I will. She cried out. Anna returned the hug as she allowed Fariha to cry into her shoulder. So beautiful, I'm going to miss you, you little pipsqueak. Torbjorn rubbed his eyes as he watched the two embrace each other. And so will I, little bird. We'll be here when you get back. You can count on it. Reinhardt spoke as proudly as he could, all while trying not to let his emotions get to him. Uncle Torbjorn, Reinhardt. Fariha then ran to them and gave both of them a hug, which they so happened to return. She then looked over towards Reyes and Jack. Uncle Gabe. Jack. Are you two crying? Crying? Haha, what are you talking about? I just got something caught in my eyes. Reyes wheezed out as he fanned his face with his hands. Yeah, someone must be cutting onions in here. Jack said as he wiped the tears forming in the corner of his eyes. Fariha smiled a bit before she let out a giggle. Oh, come here, you two. Fariha embraced both Jack and Gabriel into a hug, which they soon returned. Take care, kid. Be careful out there as well. Jack said. Yeah, be sure not to date any boys as well. If they can't beat you from hand-to-hand combat, then they're not boyfriend material. Reyes smiled. Fariha chuckled at this. You don't have to worry about that, Uncle Gabe. She then stuck her tongue out. At least not yet. Atta girl. Take care out there. She then moved on to the next person waiting for her. And surprise, surprise, it was the only person she played around with when they were still little kids. So, I guess this is goodbye. Right, Winston? No, it's not nearly goodbye. Winston stated, confusing her for a moment. It's a farewell. She then smiled before hugging him as well. I'm going to miss you, big furry fuzzball. Winston laughed at this. I'm gonna miss you too. They then separated from the hug, causing Winston to ask her a question shortly after. Say, if you ever get back, can you bring a jar of Egyptian peanut butter? I always wanted to try different kinds of them. Fariha puffed out her cheeks before emitting a laugh. Sure thing, big guy. I'll be sure to make a note of that. She then moved on towards the final person in the group before looking at him straight in the eyes. So Egypt. That's a long way from here. Naruto spoke, not knowing what to say. Yeah, she responded. The two stood there in awkward silence, not knowing what to say. It was difficult for them, not getting to see each other for a certain amount of years after growing such a strong bond together as father and daughter. with a sudden separation between the two of them. It was no doubt difficult to even think of it. Fariha, I just wanted to let you know that. Naruto rubbed back his head in slight embarrassment. Sorry, I'm not good with farewells. Fariha just leaned in and embraced him with a hug. It's okay. You don't have to say anything. She spoke as her head rested against his chest. A hug is just fine. Naruto looked at her for a moment before smiling and returning the hug as well. After a few moments, Fariha noticed something being held up next to her. You almost forgot something. She heard his father say. My falcon plushie. Fariha spoke as she grabbed it from his hands. I almost didn't realize that I forgot this. Yup, I did say I'd bring you something back when I came back from my trip to Hanamura a few years ago, didn't I? I wouldn't want you to be disappointed once you realize you forgot this. She looked at the plushie she held in her hand before hugging her dad again. Thank you. Anything for my little girl. I would do anything to see you happy. Naruto smiled as he rubbed her head. After a few more moments she let go of him, only to realize it was finally time for her to go. She grabbed her things again before she turned and walked away towards the plane, all while the seven watched her go. As soon as she was about to step on board she turned and waved towards them in farewell before entering. She was then directed to her seat by one of the pilots that were in charge. As the plane was preparing to take off, she looked at the pendant around her neck before taking it in her hand. She looked at it for a good moment until she decided to tuck it away in her shirt. She still held her stuffed falcon plushie in her hand, keeping it in a firm grip so she would never let it go. She then looked out the window in order to see her family she made during her time staying here. However, when she looked out the window all she could see was the light shining below them. It was then she realized. She was already airborne. End chapter. So this part ends here. If you want to see next part of this series, like the video now and share the story with your friends. Bye bye.